Thank you for joining us for Retooling for a Data-Driven Future, Modernization Strategies for Insurers. I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today, Chad Hersh with AWS and Craig Weber with Cognizant. Thank you both for joining us today.
It's great to be with you today. Thanks for joining. And this is actually kind of a little bit of a reunion of sorts for Chad and I. We are like twins separated at birth. And before you think Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, no, it's really more professional twins. We've both been in insurance. We've both been analysts. We both have worked kind of on all sides of this. So I'm delighted to share the stage with Chad virtually. A little bit about Cognizant AWS, just to orient you. We have been partners for a good long time. We have a great working relationship. You can see the numbers. It's a lot of people, a lot of tools, a lot of applications of really great technology. And so we're excited about the partnership and happy to bring these stories to you today.
AWS is really, really big. And one of the things that you learn when you get here is that it's more than just infrastructure. You know, it took a while for me to get my arms around that. But what I've learned is that AWS is really about helping our customers help their customers. And we do that in a number of different ways. The most commonly known one is that infrastructure piece, right? Easy provisioning of resources. So you want to spin up 100 servers tomorrow. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. You can do it today. But one of the things that allows, and this is where it starts to get interesting, is ideation and experimentation. So the ability to try new things quickly, which has always been a challenge in an industry that's mired in legacy platforms where ideation and experimentation is sort of at the bottom of the list. That in turn can lead to rapid product development, which is long been viewed as an important goal in an industry where it often takes 6, 12, even 18 months to develop a new product. In turn, that enables continuous deployment. So you're not waiting that extra amount of time once you get regulatory approval for a product to get it out there, or to develop, to implement a new internal system, or whatever the case may be. Moving away from the old ways of working and into the new ways of working. All of this together allows you to develop an entirely new, enhanced customer experience that's truly digital first. And the ability to support your customers particularly during COVID, when face-to-face interactions are limited, has been a huge critical aspect of the last, I was gonna say year, but unfortunately it's been longer than that now. And then finally, one of the side effects of all of this is you generate and have easier access to more and better customer data. And that's so critical, because so much of what we're going to talk about today is why that data is critical, how you can use it, and what kinds of things it can drive. And it used to be that people thought of it in terms of data warehousing and a 360-degree view of the customer. And those things still hold true today, but there's so much more you can do with that data, and that's really a big part of what we want to talk to you about today. So I think we want to kick things off with a bit of a poll. The insurance industry is notably slower to take the cloud journey than many other industries, and we want to get a sense for where your enterprise is making progress in their cloud journey today. We've provided 5 options here, and you can check as many as you want. Understandably, some of you won't have made progress in all of these, but it looks like we've got about a third of you have voted so far. And I'm not going to say which answer is winning, but it's not surprising. I'll say that. And it's not surprising which one has the least uptake, which is ironic because it should be much higher than it is. We'll give it just another 5-10 seconds here. And I think, still got a couple coming in. It's like popcorn. You want to wait till the votes slow down. Okay, it looks like we've got enough of you to go ahead and close it. There we go. All right, so not surprisingly, the biggest thing was of course infrastructure and compute power, which is what cloud is sort of best known for, and sort of typically the first step that companies take when going on the cloud journey. Apps and core Again, not surprising that would come in second here. Most carriers have at least one or two SaaS applications that run in the cloud. Data analytics is a little on the low side for where it should be, and we'll talk a lot about that today. AI ML is the one that I'm not surprised it's so low, but it should be a lot higher because you can do so much with AI and ML on these platforms. And then security, we won't talk much about today, but that's a coming wave. I think you'll find. If we go to the next slide.
That's great. Thank you, Chad. Thanks everybody for voting. It's interesting. It's almost like we planned it. The storyline seems to be so far, according to you and according to us, as you'll hear, there's a lot of upside here in the cloud transformation and data transformation space. So we've made progress, but a long ways to go. Just a little bit of background on Cognizant, just to give you a feel for those of you who are not as familiar with us. 40,000 associates just focused on insurance and digital. A lot of clients, a lot of offices, and kind of a who's who of the client base of insurers on every side of the insurance street. So the storylines I'm going to give to you today are based on our experience in the market, and hopefully that's a useful perspective for you. It seems like every webinar starts with a little obligatory context, and maybe this is a bit of that. We talk about modernization. I think it's useful along the lines of how the poll was structured to think about it in 4 different quadrants. And probably each of you have a story in each of these, or you could aim a project at each of these. So the modernization journey for platform might be something like, we want to move our portfolio to the cloud. That's that infrastructure piece we saw referenced in the poll. On the application side, let's get a new policy admin vendor. Let's roll up existing policy admin vendors. I'll talk to that in a little bit of a case study. For user experience, we recognize as an industry, we have a long ways to go to giving agents and customers an experience that meets their expectations, and that's a critical part of modernization. And finally, on the data side, everybody knows, or everybody thinks their data are a mess, and everybody's probably right. Everyone needs help extracting value from data. My bigger point here is that while each of these projects are great as standalones, there is some reinforcement for a modernization picture that incorporates all 4. These are not mutually exclusive, they are mutually reinforcing. And so we encourage that kind of thinking as you think about what you're doing with the cloud. So one more backdrop slide just to kind of set everybody's thinking, aligned to the case studies that Chad and I are going to share. There is a pattern to how people approach cloud typically. And there's a progression, and it kind of moves from one to the next. You can see this is an impact scale spread out over time. And as Chad indicated, most people start with infrastructure, and the goal there really is expense optimization. That's a pretty good plateau you can get to right away. It takes a little while to get trained up, to get the tools, to get the skills in-house to do that. But once you've got that, I would argue you're ready to move into the next phase, which is functionality, where you're really taking a run at business enablement. You're looking at claims and underwriting and virtually every process that you've got, and there are cloud-based tools to help you address critical issues within those functions. Once you get there, it's really not a huge leap in terms of skills to strategic enablement, what most people refer to as agility. This is really a mindset difference where we've been as an industry the same way for 100 years. Now we've got to think differently. So that's a natural progression that you'll see reflected in a lot of the case studies and probably in your own organizations as well.
Yeah, and Craig, I think going back to the last slide and onto the current slide, one of the things that's important to recognize is that these are all additive, right? So the 4 quadrants you showed, they're not either or, right? They build on one another. The chart's the same way. It's not pick infrastructure or functionality or and so on. It's all these things go together, and it's a journey. And you'll hear us use that word a lot. But one of the things you can do is try to speed up that journey. You can't do it all at once, but you can try to speed it up in various ways. And happy to have follow-up conversations with folks that want to think about how to do that.
Yeah, that maps to our experience as well. So if you don't mind playing along with us with our last poll question of the day, we just want to ask about your firm as a whole and which of those phases described in the prior slide best describes the current aim of your cloud transformation. What are you aimed at? Expense, business enablement, strategic enablement? Feel free to vote. You're going to have to pick one though. Don't think too long. We're gonna close this out quickly. Your first answer, your gut, is probably the right one.
Depends on how you define right, but yeah.
Let's see what people are thinking.
It's a pretty even horse race here.
That's about as even as you get. That's interesting. So I think there's a natural sense that most people can start with optimization. You'll hear in my case study a definite opportunity to think about 20 to 40% savings across every function, every measure, every business goal that you want to attack this way. So that one's, to me, feels like kind of an easy one. As you move up into the businesses enabling different functions and strategies, there it gets a little bit trickier. But it's interesting that you've already sort of, a third of you have gone down the higher path for sure. All right, let's move on to some case studies. Chad and I are both going to share some case studies with you just to kind of give you some thinking around how the cloud and how the transformation can play out in your organizations. This first one is about a tier 1 insurer that is struggling to make efficient use of its data. And I know that probably narrows it down because there aren't many tier 1 insurers struggling to make sense of it all. Well, actually there are. Every tier 1 insurer is doing the same thing. In this case, there are basically 3 users of this application. There's actuaries and data science and data scientists and product and pricing teams. And they're all trying to take existing data about the book of business and figure out some interesting what if analysis on that. And you can see from the sliders that are kind of behind the graphic here, they're looking at profitability, retention, growth, compliance, and they're trying to optimize those. So in some cases, pricing does what you think it does. If you drop the price, you gain market share. In other cases, it might not. And so the tool that does that allows you insight into that data, was a very old, 20-year-old system. And so you can go ahead and put those all up. The issue here really is how do you optimize the system that allows you access to that data? What they decided to do was do a version upgrade to a cloud-based version of their rating engine. They built a new UI that is designed for multiple users, multiple use cases. They built out some really good usability functions, like telling people how long the data run was going to take when they initiated it, because this is all very data intensive, processor intensive kind of work. And they really radically revved up the engine so they could run many more of the use cases, many more scenarios. They went from running 1 per month per state to running multiple queries daily. They went from tens of users to thousands of users. So this is really, I think, kind of a picture book view of what it takes to actually get value out of data. And you make it available, you give people a different mindset in how they think about it. You're no longer holding on to that 1 quarterly run to test something. You can try all kinds of stuff. And with some discipline, that really produces interesting results. Lots and lots of great metrics on the back end of this, from cost savings to improved analytic results to improved usability. But I think the bigger question here, and maybe we can have Chad comment as well, is changing people's mindset on how they think about data.
Yeah, that's a great point, Craig. And if you think about a typical insurer, just developing an innovative mindset is hard enough. So each one of these 5 things, you could, the first one could be Monday, the second one could be Tuesday, the third one could be Wednesday, rinse and repeat, right? So the ability to just try things again and again and again, going back to that ideation and innovation, is just driven by this ability to use the data in ways we didn't think about before.
Yeah,
or at least
Excellent.
only dreamed about anyway. So.
Excellent point. Let's go ahead to modernization story number 2. Now this one, we are talking about a global life insurer that is acquiring business, and the challenge here was really fourfold. It was how to take on and service multiple blocks of business, how to meet some contractual deadlines to move those blocks over, do it in a cost-effective way, and most importantly, I would say, do it in a future-proof way, because this is an acquirer. This entity wishes to be in the acquiring business, and they don't want to treat every acquisition as a one-off. So you can see we've got systems of record, multiple policy admin systems. In this case, I believe it was 13. That's quite a challenge. So what the team decided to do after some really good exploration was to separate out, and we can take a look at how this plays out, the system engagement from portals, customer and agent portals, the service center desktop, mobile versions of all of those, and treat that all as kind of an omni-channel, take an omni-channel philosophy to it. Separate that out from the system of record. Build in the middle what a lot of people are calling digital fabric. And for us, in this case, the digital fabric really boils down to 3 things. It's a very simplified view, but it's a collection of business services available via API. It's data, a data hub, a data store, and transaction hub. So in effect, when a customer calls, you can reach back into the policy admin, pull up data that you need to, but that data is actually stored for future use. So part of the digital fabric is this assumption that as you gather data and extract it out of the policy admin, you don't always have to reach back into the policy admin on the back end. This is all done with some real, I would say, clever use of a domain model, basically taking all those policy admin data models and aggregating them in a clever way. So you're only really doing things a limited number of times. So this is not a 13x sort of problem. It's more like a 1 or 2x problem. So this does a couple of things. It enables service, it gives a great UI, but it also sets the stage for future acquisitions where they can plug future policy admin systems for future blocks of business into the exact same model. And Chad, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think this is a hugely important slide, because even if you are going to consolidate all your admin platforms, and in this case, it's 10 plus admin platforms, but even if you have the best of intentions and the right approach and you're going to do that, it's going to take time. It's very, very unusual for that to happen quickly. And so during that period in which you're moving towards the ideal future state, you still have a need to improve your systems of engagement with your customers, your agents, and your employees. And so having this digital fabric is great, because you can continue to use it even after you achieve that ideal state. And so I used to use the analogy when I was back in my analyst days of when you walk down the street in New York, sometimes you'll see there's scaffolding everywhere and all the buildings are being refurbished. But on the really big refurbishment projects, a lot of times they'll put up a huge wooden facade in front of the part that's easily visible of the building, and you won't see the refurbishments that's happening behind it. And so you walk past it for months, even years sometimes, and you can't see that the work's going on. The work's going on, you hear the construction, but one day that facade comes down and it's just what essentially looks like a new building. And that's kind of what the digital fabric is, right? It's even with today's legacy platforms on the back end, it still gives you those modern feel systems of engagement today. And when the back end is all fixed, it still looks like a modern back end platform, up front. So I think this is a huge piece of the transformation journey for any insurer.
Yeah, we sometimes refer to it as a shock absorber between the system of engagement and the policy admin on the back, because there's a lot you can do without disrupting and getting into batch cycles and that sort of thing. So that's important. And you also touched on another interesting topic here, which is this project was sequenced over a number of years, starting with high priority systems first. And so this gives you a nice ability to sequence a project in a way that makes sense and also spreads that cost out in a way that makes it a little more palatable.
And I would just add that the key to all of this is data. Being able to get the data out of those systems and be able to use that data 24/7 unlike perhaps the legacy platforms that are not available 24/7.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, Chad, let's turn our attention to some of your use cases and see if there are some themes that emerge.
So before we get to the case studies, I mean, I think it's important to understand why carriers are doing this in the first place, right? We covered a lot of these, so I'm just going to go through this really quickly. But there's a need, obviously, in the market for digital channels and digital products that comes back, in part to COVID, but the need was there before, thanks to generational shifts. There's an entire generation of folks out there that only buy things online, essentially, whenever humanly possible, and don't want to sit down with a broker or an agent for hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it takes to get a life insurance policy. And so those digital channels, generational shifts go hand in hand, accelerated by COVID. Most carriers have a burdensome legacy infrastructure. Not surprising to most people on the webinar, I'm sure. But we started as an industry long before most industries did on adopting technology. The bad news is we just never got rid of it. But the market itself is suffering from commoditization of the easiest products, the ones that fit that digital channel model. So term life and similar products are under constant pricing pressure. Regulatory stuff continues to get more challenging. LDTI, for example, long duration improvements are really driving a lot of M&A activity, especially divestiture of life business. Low interest rate environment looks like it might finally start to change next year. We'll see. They've said that for a long time. The industry as a whole is just been under pressure for a very long time. I think COVID's the straw that broke the camel's back and forced us to look at digital in a whole new way. We are and always have been a data-driven business. That doesn't mean we've been necessarily good at the data part, but we've always been driven by data, right? Underwriting, has always been driven by data. Risk and actuarial has always been driven by data. The rest is where it starts to get a little murkier on our history, but where it's critical going forward, right? So claims, yeah, we've had some okay fraud detection, but we've largely relied on SIUs and things like that. Policy administration, there have been a few startups that have come in and tried to do things like analysis of likely pending lapses, but we don't do nearly enough of that. Customer experience. I can't tell you how many insurers I'm aware of that aren't leveraging streams of data from their website or from other customer-facing sources, even third-party data around social media and things like that to drive a better customer experience. And that's concerning. So the best example I've seen in a long time of a carrier saying, enough's enough, we're going to take a different path. Sun Life recently announced that they're going to leverage a whole bunch of tools from AWS. There's a couple of great press releases that detail it, but one of the things that they're doing is getting all their data into a lake, as Craig indicated with his examples. And once that data is in a lake, they're able to use the same tools that Amazon uses for Amazon.com, where data is a bit on the plentiful side. They're going to use it for things like fraud, detecting fraud, but also for being able to do next best offers in the APAC region. So that if somebody buys a product, they can make an intelligent recommendation of what else they might like to do. If they decide not to buy a product, they can recommend a different product, and so on. And all that's made possible by pulling all their data into one place on the cloud and being able to do massive amounts of analysis on it. So what we'll find on Guardian, and they've been very, very vocal about this, including a great presentation you can watch on YouTube at the Amazon reInvent conference a couple of years ago. Guardian did the same thing in a lot of ways in moving all of their data into a data lake on AWS, but they're moving as much as they humanly can to AWS and that's allowing them to do things like Guardian Direct, which is a digital platform, direct consumer, where people can go and get recommended products that cross Guardian's portfolio and even third-party products. And this is a huge shift, obviously, in the industry, and again, all made possible by the ability to invent, innovate, reinvent again and again and again by using tools that are much more flexible than what you traditionally have in legacy platforms. HDFC Life is one that most people haven't heard of. It's a massive life insurer in India. The last time I checked a couple of years ago, they were at 70 million customers. So it's a different kind of scale. And as a result, you've got to automate where you can. They have a different level of need. And so they use AWS's tools, again, same kinds, not same kinds, the exact same tools that Amazon uses to do product recommendations when you go shopping on Amazon. HDFC, they actually use those to do product recommendations across their portfolio. And not only can they nudge website customers on a personalized journey, but they can actually use email, push notifications, text messages, all as part of that personalized recommendation engine. So they've done some really cool things that are it reminds me of the mobile phone market globally. US did some interesting things early on, but the rest of the world, the rest of the non-industrialized world just skipped landlines altogether and did some really cool things with mobile devices like payments that were way ahead of where we were. I think we're going to start to see this happen across the world, where they don't have that legacy infrastructure necessarily, and they can do some really cool things with much less effort. But as Craig demonstrated, there are ways that we can still do it with legacy platforms in place. We just have to be a little more creative.
I just had one comment on your last slide. I'm kind of amused in a rueful sort of way. If you put your way back hat on and say 30 years from now, 30 years ago, what was cross-sell and upsell about? The person who was responsible for that really had a challenge, like a serious data challenge. And they had a interaction, difficulty kind of connecting with customers to make use of the data, even if they had it. But what you're describing is something altogether different. It's kind of the coming together of capabilities to aggregate and analyze the data, but also to deliver the experience at the time and place when the customer is actually going to pick up on your advice and do something about it. So I'm just amazed at kind of where we've come over the past 3 decades.
Well, and you remind me of one critical point too, which is that we're talking about these direct channels, but these can all be done through agent channels as well. You can push the recommendations to the agent, and the agent can make those recommendations. I don't want to give the impression that we're excluding any channels. So yeah.
Let's go ahead and take a question or two, Chad.
Let's jump over here. Perfect. All right. So it looks like our first question is, hang on, they're coming in fast and furious. Okay. Seems for life insurers, the main focus right now, thanks to COVID, is around digital distribution. Isn't modernization, and especially data modernization, a separate initiative? Is now the right time to be thinking about it? In short, yes, it's the right time to be thinking about it. And while the question is, correctly states that modernization and data modernization are in some ways separate, and that modernization, the digital front end is critical thanks to COVID and generational shifts. They're almost inextricably intertwined. And that was a mouthful. But you can't really have a meaningful digital transformation without first having a much better handle on your data than a vSAN file. And data warehouse is a good start, but you can do, the more flexible you have in terms of the access to your data, the better off you're going to be, and the more you can do with it, and the more you can analyze it, the more value you can extract from it. So I think, yes, they're separate, but they're also tightly linked and need to not rely on one another, but they can deeply benefit from doing them together.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chad. I also think you quickly run out of runway when you try to go down the digital path and you don't solve some of the more fundamental issues. So in almost every business decision and kind of planning cycle, there's a combination of putting out fires on the one hand, but also solving some fundamental needs, long-term needs on the other. And I would agree with you. You kind of have to do both.
And I see a follow-up question to that. How are they related? And isn't one about applications and the other about data? You could phrase it that way, but I think it misses the very important point, which is almost all applications today rely on data. And there's not much of a point to data without some kind of application to leverage that data. So yes, separate, but still, I would still argue they're deeply intertwined. You mentioned that Guardian uses data to improve customer experience. Isn't insurance data mostly collected on the front end and used on the back end? What does that have to do with customer experience? It's a great question. I've heard that phrase before, right? Data is collected on the front end and used on the back end. And that's not unfair, but I think it's important to understand that the collection of data from the front end can then drive the experience the customer has later. So you can take what's called streaming data from a customer's web journey, see what things they looked at, see what things they clicked on, see what things they started and didn't finish. There's tons of data that are generated as a customer goes through the journey, and you can leverage that so that the next time they come back, or even if they don't come back, you can reach out to them via email or other ways and give them a much more personalized experience that's much more likely to result in a positive interaction with them, and ideally leading to improved uptake or other engagement. So I think that it is collected at the front end, it is used at the back end, but it can be used on the back end to drive the front end.
Without getting into any secrets here, I have the feeling like Amazon, I'm an Amazon customer. I have a feeling they know more about me behaviorally and leverage some of that information than I probably realize myself. So I don't even know what devices I'm on when I'm interacting with Amazon, or what time of day, or those sorts of things. But I have a sneaking suspicion that Amazon might have a good feel for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think as an Amazon customer, not even as an employee, I'm always astounded by the extent to which those recommendations go. We tend to forget it's not just Amazon.com, right? It's Prime Video, it's Whole Foods. I sometimes wonder if my employer knows more about me than my spouse, which is concerning. But I think it's reasonable to say that we absolutely do that on the Amazon.com side of things. Leverage that front end data on the back end to drive the front end once again. Okay, I see another question of what is AWS offering for the insurance industry, and does it have any industry-specific functionality? Is it accessible across the globe? Yes. So in short, it's a number of things. We have a ton of horizontal offerings, obviously, and then we have a lot of things that are tailored for the insurance industry in terms of solutions, but a lot of that is done in conjunction with partners like Cognizant. So Cognizant has built some functionality on top of AWS tools to drive industry-specific solutions. We work with tons of insurtechs and ISVs to provide industry-specific solutions that are broader than just one ISV solution, to bring to the market. And ultimately, we're trying to drive when people talk about the Amazonification of insurance, it's not about Amazon selling insurance. It's about how do we help insurers provide a better customer experience for their customers, because that's really what's at our core. Craig, any other thoughts you want to share as a partner?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're excited about how we are verticalizing Amazon tools, but let's go upstream of this just a little bit and say, I would say to any of my clients or anybody's clients, just make sure you're getting really good verticalized advice, because the verticalization really does make a difference. I've been in a lot of meetings where, some vendors maybe didn't have quite the grasp of the insurance industry. And unless you start from that place, you're probably going to get your solution wrong. There's critical elements that need to be kind of incorporated and baked in based on the knowledge of the vertical. So whether it's us or anyone else, make sure you're getting really good vertical advice, because I think there's a lot of value there.
Well said. I think we are all good. I think in terms of wrap up, how can we help you meet your goals? So the choices are, again, you can choose more than one. If you want to discuss the presentation we shared, if you want to discuss your unique scenario, if you want to just have an account rep contact you, or we can send you information about our services, feel free to select multiple. This is a great way if you want to save yourself some time later in terms of emailing us. But we'll put our LinkedIn contact info up in just a minute, so that you have that as well. But in terms of the overall theme here, I did want to reiterate, first of all, let us know the best way to connect with you if you want to talk to us. But I think that data is at the core of transformation, and no matter what kind of transformation you're doing, whether it's business transformation, a digital transformation, core systems transformation, there's got to be a critical data component to it. And I think that we can, we can help with any number of data initiatives, but also with any transformation initiatives. Craig, anything you want to share to wrap up?
Yeah, just my parting thought is, we are very enthusiastic, Chad and I and our firms, about what is going on with technology around insurance modernization. So we're happy to engage with you, because this is something we love to talk about, and we truly believe that there are some intriguing possibilities that have emerged that were not there even just a few years ago. So this is a great time to start the conversation.
Indeed, and our LinkedIn contact info is on the screen now. There's also a link to just go directly, and you can fill out the form. If you want to reach out to us, feel free. Happy to have a conversation about this anytime. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.